People often ask me if I'm Stephen King's daughter because I'm a writer, and the answer is no, not to my knowledge. I dare myself to write 2,000 words a day for the rest of August. What if I just wrote 2,000 words a day for the rest of August? So just write a novel with the purpose of throwing it away and see what comes out. The first draft of a novel is never going to be perfect and is probably not even going to be that good. Writing felt like writing uphill. It wasn't like painful to write, but it was like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get ourselves to write. We're gonna go. I kind of feel like the first draft is like building the framework of a house, and then the next drafts after that are like decorating the house, painting the walls, adding decor, and like making everything look beautiful. But without building the house itself, you can't decorate. This is kind of crazy. And like, honestly, I might sound kind of crazy for this, but I like to put one song on loop in my headphones for my entire writing session. Testing. I'm gonna clap for a slate. Hi guys. Today I wanted to talk about writing. If this is the first you're seeing of me, hi, my name is Carrie and I am a writer. I'm currently writing my second novel. I am 40,000 words in pretty much. I'm like 400 words off, so pretty much 40,000 words in. Approximately 3 weeks ago, I had around 9,000 words. So I want to talk about my writing process for this current novel, how I've been drafting the first draft, and how it's been effective, because I mentioned in my last video that I wrote the first 9,000 words of this novel like a year and a half ago. I came up with the idea, I think 2 years ago, and I started writing it like a year and a half ago, and I was calling it my throwaway novel, which I find to be kind of funny. I had just finished Unstable and I was publishing it pretty much around the same time that I started writing this novel. I was like, I need to work on something else. I need to stop focusing on the novel that's already going to be out, and I need to start writing something new. So I started writing my new novel. I wanted to call it my throwaway novel because I realized that every time I sat down to write, I started to get really stressed about staring at the blank page before me. I think I started to get really used to the fact that Unstable was in its like 11th draft. Of course, when you go through 11 drafts with something, you have put so much work into it, and so it's no longer that first draft feeling where it's like you're kind of writing and you're like, okay, I don't know what I wrote. I don't even know if it's usable. By the 11th draft, you've gotten so used to your novel. You've spent hours, days, months, years perfecting every line in the novel. At least that was for me. Like, I did 11 drafts of Unstable, and I know every line of that book like the back of my hand, and I've put so much effort into crafting it. So you're so used to kind of staring at an 11th draft. So to start over again and to go back to draft one, which is the blank page, it's kind of stressful. I could feel that I was kind of holding back, and I was too nervous about writing to get any words out. And so I told myself, I was like, this novel will just be the novel in between your first novel and your next novel. So this is just going to be the throwaway novel. So just write a novel with the purpose of throwing it away. Basically, I was like, I'm just going to write something so that I can then throw it away and then eventually move on to my next published work. So that took all the pressure off of this novel, and I just started writing. I kind of like wrote those first 9,000 words, kind of getting the idea articulated and kind of meeting my main character and understanding her voice and things like that. But I put the book down and I didn't go back to it. So this month I was talking to my friend Meg, and she's working on a lot of writing projects, and she was like, I think you should go back to, I don't want to say like the name of the book, but I'm not going to be like project whatever, so I'm just gonna call it novel 2. So she's like, I think you should go back to novel 2 and write it, because it's really good to have a project to work on, and it's good to have like a long-term goal, something to kind of pick away at and like feel like you're working towards something. Because I had just finished writing a screenplay that I was really excited about. So I was like, okay, yeah. So I started writing again, and I had to kind of scrap some of it to get my new idea of the book ready, because some of the stuff just wasn't usable after I changed a few details about the outline. But I freshened up the outline. I had some ideas about new ways for the book to go, ways to make it a little bit more fun, ways to add a little bit more of like a personality to my main character that I think is like interesting, and ways to bring the two main characters together that I want to like bond and get to know each other throughout the course of the book. I came up with all of that and I sat down to write. I felt super excited about writing. When I sat down to write my outline, it was like, whoa, like flying out of me, like the ideas. I could totally see like where my book was going and like the plot points, and I could see those, even like those last scenes in my mind and like where I needed to get to. And I sat down at my computer. Writing felt like writing uphill. That's like the only way that I can like describe it. It was like every word was a little bit heavier or harder than just like when you're kind of like on a roll with writing. It felt like running uphill, but writing. So like writing at an incline, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it, because it wasn't like painful to write, but it was like, we're gonna do it. We're gonna get ourselves to write. We're gonna go. I started to feel a little bit fatigued, or like I just didn't know if I could get there. Again, I missed the feeling of like having an 11th draft in front of me. It's a very different feeling having a blank page in front of you. The first draft of a novel is never ever, unless you're some sort of genius, and if you are, then good for you, but the first draft is never going to be perfect, first of all, obviously, and is probably not even going to be that good. Like the first draft, this is what I have been telling myself throughout this process. The first draft is just you telling yourself the story. I look back on Unstable, my first book, and I was looking back on the first draft to give myself like a little bit of motivation of like, oh, don't worry, Unstable's first draft looked like this, and now it's Unstable and you're really proud of it. So if you can just get through this first draft of novel 2, you can get something that you're really proud of down the line. I was talking to my dad about this, and I was like, I kind of feel like the first draft is like building the framework of a house, building like the walls of a house and everything. And then the next drafts after that are like decorating the house, painting the walls, adding decor, and like making everything look beautiful. But without building the house itself, you can't decorate. So you can't decorate something that doesn't exist. So you have to build the house and then you can make it look beautiful. And so that's something I've been kind of holding on to throughout this process, even though I do find myself coming up with different turns of phrase or like word choice that I'm really excited about and will probably make it to the last draft. But a lot of it is just kind of grabbing your hammer and the nails and like getting this first draft written, getting the house built. So that's kind of where I was at starting this first draft again. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get myself to write this when it feels this way. I came up with a little plan to make August of this year, August 2024, like a fast draft month for me. Like I know people say or do like NaNoWriMo, things like that. I've never done that, but because it's summer and everything's a little bit more chill at work right now, I was thinking, what if I take this time to kind of fast draft a draft 1 of novel 2. Then once it's done, I can be like ready to revise and have that really fun revision time, because revision is my favorite part of writing. I absolutely love it. I always say, I keep using metaphors, but you know what? I'm here to talk about writing, so I'm going to tell you all my metaphors. I always say that like revision feels like chiseling away at an ice sculpture, and you're just making these tiny little chisels, and then you step back and it's this like beautiful work of art. And I really love that feeling. So I told myself, just get through the first draft. And how am I going to do that? So I set a word count goal of 2,000 words a day for the remainder of August. I was a little bit like lenient where if I hit 1,800 words and then I was like, my brain cannot keep writing, like my brain is tired, I'd be like, okay, that's enough. Like we got there, we got 1,800, like it's chill. But for the most part, for about 2 weeks, I would get up, I would go to a coffee shop near my apartment. I'd bring my laptop. This was like the first thing I would do in the morning. I would get a matcha. I would sit down with my matcha, take a few sips, feel the caffeine hitting, and then I would just write 2,000 words. And my method was also, I like to put, this is kind of crazy. And like, honestly, I might sound kind of crazy for this, but I like to put one song on loop in my headphones for my entire writing session. So I would put on like something that has like a good BPM that is like kind of in the cadence of my writing. I would put this song on and have it loop for the entire writing session, and I would just sit and write 2,000 words. A huge rule for me was that I love editing so much, like I've said. So when I would sit down to write, before I got the 2,000 words written, I wasn't allowed to go back and reread what I had written the day before. I had to first put 2,000 more words on the page, and then I could go back back and reread stuff. And then later in the night, if I wanted to go look at what I wrote that day, I could reread it. But until I got my words down, I couldn't reread, because as many writers know, you get stuck in that revising those first few chapters and you're never going to have a book written. You're going to have some pretty awesome, 3 chapters, but that is not really worth anything unless you finish the book, because no one will ever see it. So I would write 2,000 words. And for the first few weeks, it still felt every day like climbing a mountain. I would be sitting there at the computer looking at my little Scrivener word count, and I would be like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't actively dislike this, but like, I wouldn't be like choosing to do this if this wasn't like a challenge, which is why I think it's important to set challenges for yourself that you're kind of daring yourself. You're like, okay, I dare myself to write 2,000 words a day for the rest of August. What if I just wrote 2,000 words a day for the rest of August? And then suddenly you look at your computer, and what was once 8,000 words a few weeks ago is now 40,000 words. And they're not perfect words, but they're words that you can work on and perfect over time. And also, while you're writing the words, you're telling yourself the story, you're ironing out details, you're discovering character traits. You might be coming up with like really good dialogue moments and really good details about things that you're just like, ooh, I love the way that I said that. And you never would have written it if you didn't tell yourself to write 2,000 words a day. I feel like this is like a Stephen King thing, which, first of all, I just want to say, my name's Carrie King, and people often ask me if I'm Stephen King's daughter because I'm a writer, and the answer is no. I'm not Stephen King's daughter, not to my knowledge. So not quite following in Stephen's footsteps, but I do think it's funny because I've been doing a lot of research about writing recently, and I've been seeing a lot of videos of Stephen King talking about writing, and people are always like, how do you write so much, Stephen? Like, how do you have so many novels? And he talks about how he goes in and he writes 6 pages a day, and he just does that every single day. And he also said that you have to read a lot to be a good writer as well, which both of those things seem to be true in my life right now, where when I started reading more voraciously and getting super into Jane Austen's novels and finding things that I liked, that's when I felt Unstable, my first novel, become more of a crafted work of art to me, more of something literary and smart. And I felt my novel become so much richer to me based on the inspiration of what I liked in reading into my writing. So I totally agree with Stephen King on that. And then also what he said about how he likes to write 6 pages a day, I think that that's so important to realize that Stephen King goes and he sits down and he writes 6 pages a day. And the thing is, it's not only that 6 pages will add up, 2,000 words will add up, it's that you're also getting better and you're improving and you're practicing. I think that there's something to be said about that. And obviously 2,000 words a day is not something I plan on sustaining over, a long period of time. It's more of just like a challenge for August. I have missed a few days because my sister came into town to visit, and I tried to write during those days, but it's hard when you have company and things like that. But for the most part, I started this challenge, I want to say the first maybe 7 days or so into August, and I have now reached pretty much 40,000 words for my novel. And I tend to underwrite the first draft and then add about 20,000 words after that in the next drafts. So I'm assuming my book is probably going to land at 55,000 the first draft and then 75,000 by the last draft. With all that being said, if I didn't set the challenge to write 2,000 words a day, if I didn't get up, have my matcha, and climb that mountain of writing, if I didn't stare at the blank page before me, and if I didn't, think critically about my ideas and try really hard and challenge myself, then nothing would be on the page. But because I set the challenge, whether or not the novel is good, we'll see. I like some of it, and I already know how I'm going to improve some of it. But without writing when I didn't feel like it, constantly striving to just add words to the page and get there, if I didn't do all of that, I wouldn't have 40,000 words that I hopefully am turning into a new novel. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to talk more about writing and things like that on this channel going forward, and maybe keep you guys posted with my new novel. Also, if you guys are watching this and you want to read something that I've written, Unstable is out now. I just released the paperback, so I will link it down below in the description if you want to read something that I've written. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on right now. 2,000 words a day. I haven't done my words yet today, so I think I'm going to go get a snack, get a matcha, and write my words for the day. And we'll see what I write, because sometimes you write something that you're obsessed with, and sometimes you write something that you're just like, I needed to write something and this was kind of a scene that I didn't really care about, but I needed to write it, and you find a way to write it. That's how it goes when you set a goal like that. So challenge yourselves to write a certain amount every day, whatever you think is a good amount for your schedule, and just start writing, see what happens. Before I go, the last thing I will say is that I live in LA and I've desperately been like, I really want a haircut. I was looking up salons near me and everything is like over $100. Like $100 is like a cheap haircut, I feel like, in LA, which is so crazy because like in Rhode Island, a haircut is like $40. Rhode Island is where I'm from. So I was like, I just don't want to spend over $100 on a haircut. Last night I walked to the store and I got some hair cutting scissors and I gave myself a haircut. So I just want to show off my little haircut that I did last night. I think that it looks good. And so yeah, that's my update on my hair. Anyway, I'll see you guys all in the next video.